Welcome to Sachs Realty's Tuesday night podcast, where we talk about anything and everything real estate. Each week, we deliver expert information enabling you to make better informed decisions while keeping more money in your pocket. If you're interested in real estate, this is your show. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in tonight. Tonight we're going to talk about some of the top renovation mistakes that you can, or that we've made, and that you could make too. And hopefully, guys, you're going to learn from our mistakes. John Schuler is our guest tonight. John is a house flipper, house renovator, not that far away. He's in Virginia. I'm Todd Sachs. I am your host tonight. I'm the broker and founder of Sachs Realty. We're a local real estate brokerage here in Maryland. And both John and myself have been flipping houses for quite some time. I've built houses. And guys, the real estate market is still amazingly hot. And one of the things that we're finding is that, a lot of people are just buying the house as is. So, it may not be fixed up the way that you want it, and you may end up diving in, doing some renovations yourself. Who knows? You may think about flipping houses or, doing this for a living, maybe buying some short-term or long-term rentals where you need to put some work into it. So John and I are going to share our top mistakes tonight. Hopefully we're going to save you some headache, some heartache, and some money. And the big thing is, guys, we want to hear from you too. So if you've had similar situations, feel free to pipe in. This is a live show tonight. If you're listening after we're live, go ahead and comment in down below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have a question, we'll make sure that we get a hold of you. All of John's information also will be in the show notes. John, welcome back, man. You're a return contributor to our Tuesday night podcast. Tell everybody a little bit about you.
Well, Todd, I appreciate you having me on. And yeah, my name is John Scholler, like you said, and I currently live in Charleston, West Virginia. And my partners and I, Steve and Andrew, we've been flipping houses for them the last 7 years. I joined up with them 5 years ago. And in the last 7 years, we flipped almost 200 houses. So we've been pretty busy. Some of those would be wholesales, but the majority are flips. And I also run a YouTube channel, John Scholler, and an Instagram page, The Frugal Investor. So not only do I flip houses with my partners, but I also do private money lending with my wife. And we also own our own properties where we're landlords. And yeah, we stay really busy between YouTube, flipping houses, running social media, and of course, our 3-year-old daughter keeps us busy.
That will definitely keep you busy. John, where did you come up with the Frugal Investor? Can you kind of give us some foundation to that?
Yeah, so I started off in life cheap. Like I used to deny it, but I was cheap. I would unplug the toaster when I left the house, right? It's funny because I had a friend that had influence on me. He was picking up pennies and saving quarters from the time we were 15, 16 and saving all of his lunch money and anything he got from his grandparents or birthday. And we always pick on him and call him tight and cheap. And then when we're like 18, and he tells me he's got 40 grand in the bank. And now I didn't come from money. So 40 grand to me might as well have been $100 million. And I was like, wait, I've been picking on this kid jokingly. He's my best friend, still is. I was picking on this kid like, oh man, but saving actually worked. So I like hit a flip in my switch in my head, and I started saving my money, unplugging my stuff and unscrewing my light bulbs. This is before I knew any better that only saves you like 10 cents a year or something. But I was doing it. And then my wife, who I met shortly thereafter, learned I was cheap. And so I went from cheap, and then I learned about the word frugal and frugality. And that's more intentional. Cheap is just saving just to save with no real intention. But frugality is saving intentionally and spending intentionally. And I said, okay, I can get on board with that. So that just naturally was a good name for me, the Frugal Investor.
So when you say that you came into a partnership of people that were flipping houses, kind of what was your role? I mean, was it helping them to save money? I mean, what was what was your, I guess, attraction to your partners to bring you into their flipping business?
Yeah, it was like a really strange how that came to be. And it'd be a whole nother podcast. But quick story is, we were moving to Charleston, West Virginia because my wife got into nurse anesthetist school. And I had sold my company back in Virginia, a moving company. And so I wanted to get into real estate. I knew that was the next endeavor I wanted to do. So I started reaching out to people before we moved here and saying, hey, I want to meet up with you guys and just, pick your brain. You guys know the market. I don't know real estate. I'm a greenhorn at this. So let me just shadow you guys, or just not even that yet. I just wanted to meet with them. So I met with them. And at the time I was running a photography Instagram page and a travel Instagram page for my wife. And they were trying to build their Instagram. And they said, we had probably 50, 60,000 followers on there at the time. And they were like, hey, just come by the office and you can pick our brain and we'll pick yours on the social media thing. And I went to their office on March 1st. It'll be 5 years this March 1st. I don't know, was that 2017, 16? I'm not sure. But I went on March 1st to just do that. Ended up shadowing them for about a week, coming in every single day. I was there, first one there at the office, and then we joke about it today, but I was stalking their bathroom. I was finding things that I saw little problems because they just moved in this new office, and anything I could fix, anything I could do to show value, because I wasn't a real estate investor, I would do. I was trying to stand out as much as I could and show these guys I'm a hard worker and I'll do what I say I'm going to do every time. I don't care if they wanted me to clean their shoes, I would have did it. Thank goodness they didn't, but they didn't want me to do that. So 2 weeks goes by, 3 weeks goes by, and I start filling this role of kind of the financial department because that's my background. That's my role. These guys, Steve more so than Andrew, but these guys didn't have a really big small business background where I did. So they were kind of new to the business and the financial aspect of it, where that part I did know. And so it just kind of became my role of first CFO. And then eventually I'm very organized and became CEO of the company. And now we're partners and we've been running it for 5 years. So it's really weird how that worked. But if you're going to take something from that, get around the right people as quickly as you can and show them your value. Everybody needs something, no matter what their wealth, their status, where they're at in life. Everybody needs something. I don't care if that's cleaning their car on the weekend. Just show them that you're a hard worker, you'll show effort, you'll show up, and you'll do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah, that's great. And a lot of that goes to renovations because you're building teams when you don't even really realize that you are. I mean, you're hiring people, whether you're a homeowner and you're renovating your first house, you're doing a home project, putting a new kitchen in, anything like that. You need to connect with people and make sure that you've got the right team. Let's talk about those renovations. Let's kind of dive right into it. I can think, John, of a lot through 30 years of being a builder and a rehabber and a renovator. I mean, I've probably forgotten so many of those mistakes that I've made. There are a couple that stick out in my head. But let's just dive right in. I mean, in the last several years, I guess, because talking about the most recent mistakes, give us an example of, I mean, we kind of break this down into, there are a lot of different mistakes that we can make. Financial mistakes, bad judgment, bringing in the wrong people, emotional mistakes, unforeseen mistakes. You get into the project and all of a sudden you're like, wow, how would you have ever known it unless you had an x-ray gun? Kind of get us started with, what was something that has stuck out in your mind as like, wow, it was a huge mistake, and how did you get over it? How were you able to pull it back in and not lose, not be discouraged?
Yeah, so we've made several. So when it comes to the renovation side of things, I've learned everything about renovating houses and about, to my extent of the knowledge. I don't go hands-on on these projects. We sub almost everything out now because the volume we're doing, there's no way we can do it hands-on. But I've project managed a few properties, but everything I know is from my partner, Steve Coyne. He's the GC. That's what he brings to the side. He's the construction side. But I have project managed a few houses before and, did the whole process from start to end. And I'd say the trouble that we got in was probably mostly in the beginning with not having like a good software or a good way to track your budgets. If you're doing this stuff with pencil and paper, you don't have a good accounting system, good software, a good bookkeeper, you can get in trouble very quickly. And what I mean by that is like, you can get to the end of the project, pay the whole project out, right? Pay everybody out, pay the investor off. And 2 weeks later, an invoice comes in for $6,000 for the last bit of that structural work that you forgot on that contractor because you're not tracking it, right? You just forgot. Oh, the whole structural work was, let's just do even numbers, was $30,000. They invoiced 10, and then their accounting department got behind. You got all the way through the project, and they forgot there's still $10,000 to invoice you, and you forgot too because you weren't tracking accurately. You didn't have a system set up, And now the house is gone, sold, the investor's gone. Guess who's on the hook for that 10 grand? You are. So, things like that, not having a good system in place is number one. Taking people's word for things, hey, the structural's fine, the plumbing's fine. I just had something upgraded and you don't double check them on that. That's something you don't want to do. Always put your own eyes on it. Always do your own due diligence. I'm trying to think of other things,
Well, John, let's just talk a minute about the budget because,
Okay.
this is interesting. And when I first started out as a subcontractor, working for a lot of new home builders, it was amazing the amount of people that I saw during the course of a home build that became divorced, or they were selling the house when they were finally finished building it a year later. And what I did was I did a lot of work on custom home construction starting out, and budgeting is extremely important. And what I found, and this is so true, even on the small project, somebody wants to renovate a bathroom. I think it is very important that you look at what is out there and available for you to buy. Because when you're getting into a project, it is really important that you have a financial budget and that you understand where that money is going to be spent. And then you need a little bit of overage. So where I saw a lot happen was not on the big stuff, because when you think about renovating a kitchen, you're thinking about, one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to go and you're going to rip it out, which doesn't cost a whole lot of money. You get it ripped out. Even moving walls and things like that doesn't cost a whole lot of money. But what does cost a whole lot of money are the finishes that you put in. So the cabinets that you pick, the hardware, the handles, the pulls can be very expensive. The faucets. And I remember, and when you're dealing with budgets and you're working with a contractor and you may not know, maybe they put a budget together to do the project and they will give you a budget of, let's just say, faucets, and the budget may be $300. And then you go shopping and you're like, wow, this is a really cool one. Oh, it's $600 or it's $800. And what happens is now you're like, well, we're in the middle of it. If we're going to make the decision to do it, we may as well get what we want now. And then what happens is that ends up happening again, 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 and again. And then you get down to your appliances and you're like, well, this refrigerator is $1,000, but this refrigerator is $2,400 or $3,000. So I think what I would say as far as the budgeting is, yes, have a good way of documenting numbers. And from our standpoint, we're coming from the contractor side, but from your standpoint, look at those things. If you're going to do a kitchen renovation, understand what goes in the kitchen when you have a chance to rip everything out, and look at what those products are out there. Start putting those numbers on it before you really get to the point of hiring a contractor. Because then when a contractor says, well, we give you these budgets, you can go, well, that's not going to be enough because we want a $600 faucet, not a $300 faucet. So, and guys, we want to hear from, if you are listening to this and you're saying, hey, you can relate to what we're saying, or you have a situation, we want to hear from you. John, how about something on, have you ever made a bad judgment call on a project?
Yeah. So, we run a business of flipping houses. So a lot of people, they flip a few houses here and there, but we actually run and employ people based off of flipping houses, and we have hired wrong repeatedly. This is something that all three of us have agreed we're just not good at. We don't know. We feel like we have good intuition. We feel like we are easy to get along with. We always pay on time. And we just, for some reason, especially our in-house staff, we seem to be, getting some good momentum right now. But we have gone through probably 4 or 5 in-house bookkeepers, probably 5, 6 office managers, and that's just if you're just talking about running a business. But if you want to talk about contractors, if we haven't gone through 30 or 40 different contractors, like been through them and on to our next set, I would be surprised. We might have fired 50 and fired 50 by now. It is very tricky business. The contractors, in my mind, are forced to be small business owners just by the nature of the business, you know, and they are not that, or they try to do it all. So they try to be the bookkeeper, they try to be the answer the calls, they try to do the scheduling and the booking. And contractors become what I call yes men. They say yes to every job because they don't know when the next one's coming. And then they don't, I don't want to say they don't care. Okay. Everybody's looking out for themselves in small business, usually in business in general, right? It's a capitalist market. So they'll say yes to your job. They'll say yes to the next person's job and yes to the next person's job, because every time they say yes, 20, 40, 60 grand, they don't want to say no to any of that because there might not be another job for 4 or 5 months. The problem is they've already committed to you for the first 20 grand, and that would take them 6 weeks. Now they're trying to jump from job to job to job and keep up. And it becomes, now you suffer for that, because now what have you done? Even if you pay, which I recommend, at percentages, so they do 10% of the work, you pay 10%. Never pay up front. Nobody, I don't care if it's your brother. You don't pay anybody up front for any work ever. You do a contract on everything. At least anything for us, anything above $500 is a contract. You put it, when's your finish date? You know, are we agreeing to, and what's the penalties in place if you don't finish on time? So a contract, no matter what. So you put that in place, and then the amount, right? Like how much and then we're not going over this unless there's a change order we both agree to, right? So all these things are important, but they become yes men, and they do this with multiple people. And then you have no recourse other than find another contractor. And then that becomes a problem, right? Because then the contractor has to come, if they mess up, if they don't finish the job or whatever, you have to go find another contractor who wants to do somebody else's work that's already been started. This becomes a problem, right? Because a lot of people don't want to do that. They don't want to go in behind another contractor. You know, if they've been painting and they painted 3 out of the 10 walls that needs to be painted, and they've done a sloppy job, we're going to do this whole thing again. I'm not being liable for the 3 walls I already painted. They're not good. So guess what? You just wasted money. You just wasted the money. So these are just things that, like, contractors are difficult to deal with. So the best thing you can do is be prepared and do the documentation correct. A contract, scheduled date, agreed upon price, how change orders work, and penalties in place for if they're not done on time. All that needs to be there. And if you start without that, you are being very dangerous, in my opinion.
Man, let's unpack some of that. I mean, that's some good stuff. Some of the biggest mistakes that I've made is getting involved with the wrong people. And, you know, a lot of times you said something about hiring your brother. I mean, a lot of times we want to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I tell you what, when you're doing a home renovation in your house, if you're living there, you're going to live through it. I mean, it's, you know, scheduling is very important. John, you were so right. I mean, these people are, a lot of the contractors, they're not business people. In fact, they're not even good money managers. And one of the things that they'll do is they'll chase checks. Mm-hmm. And they'll take that other job just so they can get a deposit check because they haven't finished yours to keep enough money in their pocket. So, you know, what I want to know is that they can afford to fund my job. So, you know, if you're looking at a contractor and, you know, they don't have the money to show up and start your job, you know, to me, that's a red flag. You know, I do a lot of buying my own materials, and I'm going to say, guys, that isn't always the best when you're dealing with contractors, because if you don't buy it, then they're slowed down and now you're hurting them because things aren't on the job. But with me being in the business, I buy the materials, everything's stocked on a job. You've got to be careful with deposits. John, you're 100% right. Make sure you're getting contracts, because if you don't understand the scope of work, one of the biggest mistakes that you can make in that project is, well, we didn't talk about that. No, we did talk about that. Well, where did we talk about that? So everything's in writing. So even so much as giving them a list of what you're trying to achieve or accomplish, I think that's a good idea. You know, the purpose, the whole reason I'm doing this project is because I want this. I want more space. I want a big enough pantry. I have 4 kids and we eat a lot of food. So pantry space is important. Come up with an outline of why you're doing your project. Then you can work on that contract and make sure, and John is 100% right, do not give up the money. And the other thing is, you know, talk about the schedule, because Here's where things happen. Um, Number one, if you're living through a construction project in your house, what time are they going to show up in the morning? Most contractors start 7:30 in the morning. If you're getting kids off to school, you're doing things, make sure that you talk about what's expected. What's that work day going to look like? And then what's the cleanup going to be like? And how are we going to deal with the unforeseen things that come up that aren't in the contract, the change orders that John's talking about? Um, I went
I'd like
from,
to say one thing on that, Todd, is a great question to ask a contractor. You mean that you can't legally make them prove this, but if they're contractors, they're not employees, so you can get away with asking them more. There's no real HR for that, so you can say, "How long could you carry your crew without me paying you?" And you want them to, the ones that don't know what you're asking will just say, "Well, I actually need paid every week to carry them." That's scary to me, right? That means they don't have an emergency fund, and that means if they don't complete your job in order to get paid, they're going to go paper chasing and do another small job in order to carry their job. And keep in mind that means they're operating under stress. That means they'll sometimes cut corners in order to finish the job quickly so they can get paid from you. So you really want a contractor if you can find it. I know some people are just starting out, but if they're just starting out, do smaller jobs first of all. But if you can find people that can not invoice for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time, those are the best ones. The people that can carry their own payroll for multiple weeks without worry, right? And for me, it's like you show up on time to the meeting, you show up on time to the job site, you have a company shirt on, company logo. You don't have to have a 2024 truck, right? Because look, I'm frugal too. But you need to be presentable. Is there stuff all up in your dashboard and paperwork all over? I'm looking at all this stuff because that says to me, I don't care if it's an old truck. Is it organized, right? If you get out of the truck and cans are falling out and beer cans and all, look, teach their own, but that's not something that I personally want to deal with. I want somebody that's organized, shows up on time. And if you're going to come to the job site, and this goes with anybody, I don't care who you are, if you're going to come up with no paperwork, no folder, no nothing to take notes, you're just going to, you know how it is. We all get nervous when the waiter or the waitress comes up to the table and they have no pad, right? Some of them can pull it off, but the ones that don't, it goes really bad, right?
you say,
So
they're going to remember this order? Probably not.
right.
Probably not, especially if you're complicated. I know a couple of people that order a lot of different things. You're right, 100%. How about as far as trying to save things in the house? You ever have, where you're trying to be frugal and save something? I was on a job today, actually yesterday, and so I partner with some people in doing rehabs, renovations from time to time, and I've had a partner that I've worked with for like 15 years, and he was in this job and he's pulling stuff out. We're doing a bathroom renovation, and he said, "What do you want to do with this vanity?" And I first knee jerk reaction was, "Well, let's keep it." And he's like, rolls his eyes like, "I knew you were going to say that." Like, okay, well, we'll throw it away later. Basically because it'll go back to our shop and get stuck somewhere. And then I'll get, like, why this thing's in my way, and it get destroyed.
We have a graveyard too.
Somebody will use it to cut something on, man, or something. They're going to become a tabletop for a saw, and then I'll end up throwing it away later. But have you ever, what kind of ways have you talk about some of the projects where you've gone in and, where, because, and then I'll go into my problem with rehabbing houses sometimes. But let's talk about, when you're looking at a project, I've always said my first loss is my best loss. So if I would have taken that vanity that looks in good shape, if I didn't have somebody on the job site that said, "I'll take it," I should have threw it in the dumpster. That's what I call the first loss. Because from there, that zero cost vanity that I could buy, and this thing was 24 inches, that I could have probably bought at Home Depot for $100. I'm now going to pay somebody to pick it up, be careful with it, load it, unload it 3 or 4 times, move it around. I'm going to spend $50 on the $100 vanity, and it's going to get damaged. And I should have just thrown it in the dumpster day one. How about you? What's your experience with that?
Yeah, being frugal, obviously, I always say, can I save something or can we reuse it or paint it? But my partners are good about, bringing me around on that, especially Steve. Again, Steve handles a lot of this stuff. So yeah, I'm like, hey, can we save that? And Steve's like, well, we can, but it's going to be a lot more effort and time in the long run unless we just replace it. So what we'll do is a happy medium. We'll try to find somebody else that can use it. We'll post it on the marketplace because I don't like being wasteful either. So if we can find someone that can have better use of it, we were, infamous for cleaning out the fridge that was left behind. It ended up costing like $250 to clean out the fridge because nobody wants to touch a left behind fridge. I promise you that. It's
Don't even open the
here. If
door.
you take nothing else from this, do not open a fridge door when the power's off. Just don't do it. You've got to leave the house for days. It's not worth it. Okay. And
You got to
everybody
clean
does
up
it.
puke on the
It's like
floor.
an instinct to go up and pull this fridge and see what's in there. And I remember when I was a greenhorn, when I started off my partners, one of the first thing I did in the first houses, and they were like, no, we all had to leave the house immediately. It's the worst. But we would pay people to clean these things out if the fridge was in good condition. We stopped doing that. We'll donate it at we'll tie it up so
Duct
nobody
tape it. Yeah.
you can take it as is, but you got to leave the
Right.
house with it. And some people do take them. But yeah, like that's a good time to realize if you're being cheap or if you're being frugal, and there is a difference. So you just need to always you got to calculate the ROI, and the time needs to go into it, not just the money. Okay, ROI, a lot of people tie just money to ROI, but I really teach people to also tie time to that. Okay, if it saves you $200, great, but if it takes you 10 hours, not so great. Okay, what is your time? What is your time worth? And do you enjoy doing it? Do you like doing that? Because that's, my hourly rate goes down for things I absolutely love doing, right? I mean, that's the sure. If I absolutely love doing some things and I'll do them for cheap to nothing if I love doing them. But if I hate doing them and I don't like it, I'm at 10 grand an hour, right? Real quick, real quick. So just understand that ROI is more to it than just the dollar. Like you were talking about with the vanity. Sure, you could have saved $100, but you calculated up the hauling, you calculated up the chance of it ever making it back to the house, right? Versus just sitting in your shop. So all that needs to be calculated.
Yeah, and even if you're doing the project yourself and you like it, I mean, there are people that like to restore things, but what's the chances that you're ever going to get around to doing it? And, I mean, especially, I know some of my best intentions are to do something that I like to do. But the fact of the matter is, I'm busy. And like you said, even if you have a job and you make money at your job, are you going to take off work to refinish a vanity or to repaint the vanity? Probably not. So if you're going to be the one that slows the project down, or it comes down to you having a bathroom now, or in 3 months from now, after you abandon what you thought you were going to do and then finally buy a vanity, I think that it is important that you look at the project. And another thing, some of the mistakes is when I'm trying to save something and I'm not thinking about what the end product will look like. So I'll give you an example. I just ripped a bathroom out that had chrome diverters. They were brand new diverters, the handle, the faucet head, and the part that you turn on and off for the water. And it was brand new, but we're renovating the bathroom and we ended up throwing it away because we're not going to use chrome. And so it's not going to go with it. And again, so if you're trying to save money in the project and you're looking at it, so a little bit of work up front, knowing again the budget for the project, and then really think about, are you going to use anything over again? And if so, what? And how is that really going to play into your project? John, um, is something else I want to talk about is kind of along that on a massive scale. So, is the scope of work. So some of the biggest mistakes that I've made in projects are the scope. So I'll go into it and I'll say, and a lot of times rehabbers, if you're going to renovate a house, a lot of people don't realize that you have to retrofit a lot of stuff. So that's why people go in and they do complete gut jobs and they demolish things. In renovations, some renovators are known for putting, we'll say, lipstick on a pig, right? So a lot of people, and if you're thinking about renovating houses, I want to kind of point that out, because when you're looking at a house to renovate, people don't estimate the costs very well, especially starting out. So they might think that renovation costs are going to be $20,000 or $30,000, and it's really like $70,000 or $100,000. And what happens is when you're retrofitting and you're rehabbing, that lipstick on the pig that you're referring to, or how flip really gets a bad, kind of name about it, is that you're trying to spend as little bit of money as possible a lot of times, and you're putting lipstick on the pig. But here's the more important thing, that when you're putting the lipstick on the pig, the person buying it thinks that they're getting a brand new house. And that's a big problem, because if you're buying something and you're expecting to put $20,000 or $30,000 into it, and you're expecting to sell it renovated, and somebody walks through and they're like, wow, it looks so nice, and they get into it and everything they touch falls apart, that's where that comes into play. So, when I started out, I was doing, a lot of new building and new construction, new renovation, new additions, things like that. And I had a problem going into these properties. So when I first started rehabbing, my biggest mistake was underestimating how disappointed I was going to be when I got into doing the job as a new construction guy. And we can pull up some of these pictures. So, when I first started flipping houses, John, people thought there was something wrong with me, because I would take these perfectly good houses. I'll be like, yeah, we're going to do a home renovation. We're going to renovate this. We're going to put $20,000 into the house, and I'm going to flip it. And then here's what happened. So we can look. So this is a house that I did, where I remember when I bought this, I remember how much I paid for it. And we were going to go in and we were going to redefine the roof line on it, the porch, do some landscaping. The house wasn't in that bad shape. It looks like it is, but it really wasn't. Probably could have done a nice renovation on it and made just as much money, but instead I ended up tearing it down. So we can just kind of get into see if we got, there we go. So when I when I got into this thing, one thing led to the next, and then that happened. I took all the walls and everything out of the inside of it, and then I rebuilt it, and that's what we ended up with, which was a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath. So, still a budget, it was a very affordable house, which I did a lot with those, did a lot of affordable housing. But again, and I'm going to talk about some of those mistakes here, but let's go ahead and show another one here. So this is one that was Galena. That's what this one was. I bought this house. It overlooked across the street was waterfront. You can even see on the left-hand side there, it was a big house beside it. But the same thing happened. I was like, man, this is a cute little house. We're just going to renovate this thing, and it's going to be great. And next thing you know, I tore it down and ended up building that in its place because we had to see the water. So we had a house across the street that we had to get up over top of. So that was kind of neat. And then we got another one lined up right here. There was a before picture of this, I thought, but this was another one that we did. Actually, I looked at this house. It had a little fire, and when I went to it, it wasn't a little fire. It was a pretty big fire. It was like burned out. So there's my partner, Kevin, there. Then we built a nice little house there in its place just as fast as we would have if we renovated it. But John, one of the things that I didn't realize when I started doing this was a house renovation to that magnitude, according to the county, wasn't a house renovation. So when we started getting into these things and we were doing them pretty quickly, we quickly realized that we had to sprinkle them. We had to put sprinkler systems in these things. So it started out as, hey, we're just going to do a rehab at this budget. Next thing you know, they're like, hey, you're building a new house. And we had to do sprinkler systems. And probably the biggest mistake that I made, and this is a big thing, check with your county, because if you're permitting your projects, a lot of the counties now, if you do more than a 25% renovation, they may make you put a sprinkler system in your house. They're really pushing. I don't know if in West Virginia they're doing that, John. But here's the problem that I had, which really cost me a lot of money, was that when I was renovating these older homes, to put a sprinkler system in it, they have to pass what's called a flow test. And that's where they come in and they go, in the event of a fire, if the sprinklers come on, does the street have the ability to give you a big enough line and a non-corroded line? Because a lot of these developments are older houses, and the pipes get corroded and the water flow is restricted. So sometimes I had to upgrade the street, which in one situation I think cost me $20,000+ to do, just to get a sprinkler system put in the house. So that wasn't planned on the budget. And then it was like another $6,000 to put a sprinkler system in. So, I quickly, if you're rehabbing and you're doing renovations and you want to get into doing something that I did, which was pretty much taking a house and knocking it down and building another house in its place, make sure you know all of the things that you need to do. How about you, John? You ever have to put a sprinkler system in these things?
No, we haven't had to do that yet. West Virginia, we like to say we're a few years behind on a lot of things. So we have that requirement, but it's usually for larger rentals and things like that. It's over a certain amount of square footage, and then it has to have, of course, it has to have an exit out back and an exit out front. So we do have that in certain areas. Then we have some places that are entirely unincorporated, and you can kind of do what you want. So we still have those areas here where I'm at, but I've heard of that happening, and I know a sprinkler system is not cheap. And, so it's definitely something to look out for. And always ask your county, go down to talk to your building inspector and ask them everything that you need to know. Any surprises that I need to know about if I'm doing a new build or doing a renovation. It's definitely a good tip to go do that.
You ever have a stop work order?
We have not, but we've had inspectors show up unsuspected. Now we try to do everything above board, and sometimes we get into a new area and we just don't know. We just didn't know any better. So I think the last one was probably like a year and a half ago. We were in an area that we've only flipped maybe 2 houses in, and the inspector's infamous for being, kind of nitpicky. And he showed up, and we were supposed to the back of the shower wall went up against the outside of the house, and we didn't look behind it. It was already a shower there. But he kind of knew. I don't know how he knew. I don't know how he saw it or what he did, but he knew there was not enough insulation between the shower and the siding on the outside of the house. For whatever, it was an old house, a rehab. So he made us rip out the whole shower, spray insulation behind it, then put the shower back. And maybe you could just tell by touching it was super cold or something. We still don't know.
He had X-ray vision.
Yeah, we still don't know how he knew. If someone tipped him off, we don't know what it was, but he held us up for about 2 weeks. The problem with that is when the inspector shows up, they have to come back out. So if they find a problem, if they shut you down or whatever, it's not just fix this and you can continue working. No, they have to come re-inspect, and that's on their schedule, right? So it's a real pain in the butt. And I mean, if they're busy or if you're in a small area like we are, and so they don't even work full time, so we have to sometimes wait a week or 2 weeks to get them back out to approve us to continue or to sell the house or whatever it is. So inspectors, I don't want to say they're a problem. They serve their purpose. They're there, make sure that people are doing a good job and aren't doing a janky job on these houses, just doing lipstick. So I think that buyers should certainly appreciate them. But as a builder, as a rehabber, they can be a pain in the butt. And we just don't like them because they slow us down. We don't really mind that they're making us do things right. That's fine. But it's the slowdown of the project that really gets us.
That's it. When the one project that we were showing, and we pull permits on our jobs, but sometimes you don't have the permit when you start.
We've rushed it.
Right. It's like your intentions are good, your paperwork's getting filed, but we want to go ahead and get started. So we're going to go in and we're going to. So I remember one time.
We're infamous for that for demo. We've done that.
Right. It's it. You want to get it going. You want to get it started. So I remember one time, we told the guy, we hired this demo guy, and it's like, start inside. And of course the neighbors must have called. And that's, one of the biggest mistakes is not being friendly with the neighbors. If you're going to do a project and if you're not going to get a permit, guys, better at least be friendly with your neighbors, because if they're, if you have a neighbor that it doesn't like you very much, they're going to be like, can't wait for the opportunity. Or if you're deciding to do something, you're not getting a permit and there's construction going on down the street, the inspector is going to be coming by. I can tell you that, right?
Here's a good one, Todd. I don't condone this. We do not do this. We have a name to carry, but I know of a guy who, if he starts work early or goes the whole project, he will print out an official paper and tape it on the window, and he puts it up. And so the inspector ever drives by and reads it, he doesn't. He puts it up when he's working that day and takes it down when he's leaving. So it's a dangerous game to play. And
Oh my gosh.
look, if you're doing this on the side or something, you can probably, like, it's still immoral. But if you're doing this on the side or something, you could probably get away with that. If you're doing one house a year, if you ever get busted, you probably get a slap on the hand. But if you're running a business, if you're going
Oh
to
yeah.
continue flipping in this area or building in
Oh
this area,
yeah.
you better not piss off the inspectors and the county.
Amen.
So it's not worth it.
Yeah, because if they like you, they'll let you continue and take a picture of it. If it's not done right or whatever, they won't slow you up. They won't stop your job. So, but anyway, on this particular project, we didn't have the permit yet, and the guy decided that he would start on the outside demolition first because it was easier to take the front porch off so that he could get materials out and things like that from the inside. So we got busted on that and got shut down. But so we couldn't do anything until the permit was actually issued, which was about 3 weeks. But I have seen where people don't get permits and they do get shut down. And there was a situation, there's a couple engineers locally that we work for, and I get privy to a lot of this. Being a real estate broker, I hear about it. And there was one situation where somebody had actually built a whole addition on the back of the house and went through the inspection. And what happened was the square footage on the house had changed significantly. So people don't realize this a lot of times. So if you're looking at a 3,000 square foot house on a tax record, and all of a sudden now you're selling it and the appraiser goes out and it's 2,000 square foot bigger, and the lender in this situation went back and said, like, why is there such a big, discrepancy in the square footage? And it ended up they had built an addition on the back of their house and they had done it wrong. So there were a lot of structural issues and it cost them $100,000 in repairs to make the house right. So big mistakes, get permits. It is definitely worth it, especially if you're doing it for a living, because just like John said, the inspectors a lot of these guys are local inspectors, and you'll see them again and again and again, and you don't want to have that name down at the permit office. I'll tell you something else. Let's talk about timing, because I think this is big mistakes in the business. People underestimate the amount of time to order things, especially now. But I can tell you one of the big things that I was doing this house, and we have, and one of our electric providers here is Baltimore Gas and Electric, or it's known as BGE. And we had gone into this house and we had to have the gas meter moved because it was in the way of doing renovations. And we didn't follow up with getting the designer to come out, because to relocate the meter, we had to have a designer come just to put the meter on the outside. BG&E just wouldn't schedule it. And we underestimated the time that it would take, and it kind of fell through the cracks. And we ended up not being able to get gas because we had sold the house and they still hadn't come out to do the design. And we had to put a driveway in, and we didn't want them to trench and dig up the driveway and all that stuff. So we ended up putting a propane tank out back. So I had to change all of the devices inside, all the appliances, the heaters. There was 2 heaters, the stove, and the water heater to propane. So I had to get new fittings on it and then put a propane tank in. And it was a mess by not doing a lot of those things up front. So, some of the big mistakes is making sure that, I've also had appliances that have taken 12 to 16 weeks to come in, and I didn't order them soon enough. So how about you, John? Anything like that?
Yeah, especially recently, COVID slowed down supply chains, completely stopped some of them. So yeah, we've definitely had that. I mean, we finished a house and sold it back in August, and they needed a wood door, solid wood door from Lowe's. I don't know if it was custom or not, but anyway, we won't get that door until January 30th. So this thing's been on our. We do house updates every Monday, and we joke every day that this house has been on our list for like forever, and every week it's the same, waiting on the door, waiting on the door, waiting on the door. But things like that, one-off custom products for sure, appliances. We are getting to the point now where it used to be this way with windows, and windows are still hard. But when we first close on that, when we close on the house, we order the appliance package. We used to not have to do this until the week of. We could order appliances on the Monday, and sometimes Lowe's would have it in stock. But now we're ordering 4, 6, 8 weeks out, sometimes 12 weeks out, just to make sure we have it. And we're lucky to have a warehouse where we can store it, or if we're fortunate and the house has either enough space or a garage. But that's dangerous too because of thieves. So you got to be careful with that, with unfinished projects. So you just got to adapt on some of these things. I think we've sold 2 houses over the last 2 months where the fridge wasn't there yet. The people still wanted to move in and we're fine with it. We got them a temporary fridge sometimes, like a standard white fridge, just until it comes in. But yeah, appliances, windows, certain types of tile. A lot of these things are taking a lot longer. Faucet sets, if they're custom, or like the really nice ones, all this stuff is taking longer than expected right now. So you got to plan for all this stuff. And, that's why if it's for finishes especially, you need to make sure the carriers have these. Like when you start a project, you need to make sure the carriers have these readily available and ask them what their supply chain normally looks like. Okay, I'm calling today because we're going to need this faucet set in 6 weeks. Do you guys carry it in stock? Do you usually carry it in stock? And do you see any issues with that in the future? If they say no, then you're probably safe. But if they're like, no, this is the only one we've had in stock in weeks, you better get it. You better buy it, and you better take it to the house or store it somewhere.
Yeah, and that could run into issues when you're dealing with your contractors too, because you could be slowing them up. So we're
That's a
telling you,
trick there too, is making sure your contractors have the supplies they need in order to do the job. Because
yeah,
again, they will paper chase. They're not, and that's when it's hard to blame them. If they're on your job trying to do your
right.
job and you're supplying the material, and that's the agreement. If you don't have that material there for them, you can't expect them to sit around with their hands in their pockets for 4, 5, 6 days, 2 weeks. So they're going to move on to another job. And oftentimes, that's just a change order. You got to change that because you did not have the materials there, and you can't hold up somebody's business for 2 weeks. And so, and that actually usually costs you more than that 2 weeks, because what they do is they take another job that has to be completed all at once, which could take them 4 weeks. And now they're 4 weeks getting back to your job, all because the supply wasn't there. And it's hard to blame the contractor in that scenario.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I can remember, and sometimes we're the biggest offenders to this rule, right? I mean, it's like we know this stuff for a we do it for a living and we know better. And, sometimes, I mean, I suck with paperwork, man. I mean, I will go out to a job site. I'll have 1,000 things to do and I'll go out to a job site and I will just get into it. And I have no business doing it. And next thing you know, it's like noon and but I love it, but I hate doing paperwork. So I forget to do stuff like order things and I know better. And I remember one time I was putting a kitchen in my house and we ate on a little hibachi grill for like 3 months because I didn't have a stove. I mean, my wife was about to kill me, but and I should know better, right?
It happens.
So, John, what do you say to people that want to get into this business for a living? I want to be like you and me, and flip houses. It's funny. We talked about this today at the office. There's so many people that could be listening to you and I right now, and they're like, these guys renovate houses or have built houses, renovate houses for a living, and the shows, the seminars, the books, how to make all this money flipping houses, passive income, rentals. And some people are sitting back and they're watching this and they'll probably never do it, for whatever reason. They may not do it. Something may just be holding them back. What can you tell them to help them decide if it's something that they should do? Because some people shouldn't do it. Some
Yeah,
people, I
yeah.
mean, what we go to sleep with every night, you know, may keep other people awake, right? So how does somebody know if it's something, you know, how do you explain to people if it's something that they should get into or not?
So I understand these people. I have empathy for them because I am someone who's very risk adverse person. You know, I guess you don't. I was saying this the other day, and I don't give myself enough credit, my wife and I enough credit that you don't get to our net worth and our status, financially, without taking risk. But I like to argue that we very calculated in our risk. Maybe we have $100 million net worth at this point if I'm much more risky in my 20s. Maybe, right? Maybe if I, went all in on Bitcoin when I was, when I was 18. Maybe, yeah, we would have $100 million net worth, but could have just easily went to zero, right? And so we are very fortunate that we feel very comfortable and secure right now. And while we don't have $100 million, we don't have zero either. And so I get it. I understand the hesitation. I understand the what if you lose it all. I understand what if this doesn't work out. And then the really stupid ones that I was worried about too. What if people laugh at me? What if people see me fail? Those are the easy ones that you need to just get past that right there. Understand the financial and the security of your family. That makes sense. But if people see you fail, that should not get that out of your head. Whatever you got to do, that's beside the point. But anyway, get around people. This is what helps me. I probably wouldn't have flipped a single house to date. I don't want to say that. I would have flipped a few houses probably by now and had some rentals, but I would not do near the amount of volume if I didn't get around people who are more riskier than me. So Steve and Andrew, we like to put ourselves in three categories. So I'm very risk averse, where Andrew is a little bit in the middle and Steve is off the charts with risk. He will go all in on red, right? And we balance each other out for that reason. And so you got to get that. So I argue to get around a partner that kind of is your yin and yang, like someone that y'all can push and pull. Because if you're both risky, I couldn't sleep at night. So if we were all risky and I probably couldn't sleep at night. But if one of you's a little risky and one of you's a little bit more calculated and say pump the brakes, hit the clutch, get around, form that bond, form that partnership, and start small. Do one or two houses together. All right. Before you form this humongous S corporation, LLC, and office and all that, do one or two together. See if you balance each other well, and see if you like this. See if you enjoy it. Because the worst thing to do is to get into the business to chase money and to chase what you perceive as all happiness and money coming in. Because we can both assure you that is not the case. And then you're stuck in this because now you got employees to care for, and now you got a business, an office, and overhead. Do one or two, maybe three, see if you enjoy it and build from there. I always say, profit before growth. So make sure you're making money before you grow. And now somebody who's not risk averse will say, no, screw that. I'm growing before I see profit. I will grow with a negative balance sheet. Fine. And that works for some. I can't sleep at night that way. So, but if you're going to listen to me and my advice, then I say, prove yourself on 2 or 3 houses. Did you make money? You don't have to on the first or second one. That could be a learning expense. But did you enjoy it? Did the partnership go well? Or did you hate every second of it? Because the last thing you want to do now is try to do 30 of those a year, 40 of those a year while hating it. No matter the money. Really, no matter the money, right? Because the money matters. It does matter, but it's not the whole picture. Is
Yeah,
that
I
all?
think
Sorry, I rambled, but
no, that's all great advice, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think just to kind of recap on some of the things that you said and what you've done, and what I have also done is I surrounded myself with people that are in the business. Even at it, when I started out in my early 20s, if it's something that you think that you want to do, I mean, you can read as many books or listen to as many YouTube videos about something, but at some point you have to get into the experience. So if you're ever going to feel comfortable with something, you have to feel the experience. So if this business is a business where it's if you're going to get into it, in order to be really good at it, you have to get a little dirty. Especially if you don't have the money starting out. You need to be more hands-on. You need to get dirty. You need to dive into the construction side of things. You need to know people. So I always say to do that, like you did. You got familiar with people. And then the other thing is, like, again, start small, like you said. I mean, one of the best ways to do it is to buy your own house.
Hmm.
So if you're sitting around right now and, you're renting, you know, think about how you can actually buy something, because that will get you into it will ease you into the risk or the uncomfortableness of, going all in on an investment property that you have to continually spend money. So if you can find something, if you're renting right now, try and figure out a way that you can buy, and start out with something that's not ideal, not your perfect scenario, and make that your investment. The nice thing is you can turn some pretty good profits that way, tax free, if you live in it. Your primary residence, I think if you're in it for 2 years, I'm not an accountant, but I think the rule is 2 years. You live in it for 2 years, your primary residence, you can profit up to 250,000 as a single person and a half a million as a married couple. I don't think that's changed.
I think it's
You
two
can
out
do
of the
that.
last 5 years is I think the rule. So you
Yep.
can actually live in it a
Yep.
year, move away and rent it for 3 years, come back,
Okay.
live in it for 1 year and sell it you keep the profit.
Yeah, right. So 2 out of 5 years, you can do it twice in a 5 year period before it has to reset. So that's a great way of doing it. You can reach out to John or myself. I mean, we would be happy to help you as much as we can, point you in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, getting into those renovation projects, guys, big mistakes that we've shared tonight is, planning is key. John talked about budgeting, understanding your money. I kind of recapped that with saying know what things cost, because I've seen some of the biggest mistakes is they get into the project and they didn't plan on it being that expensive. You're going to spend more than what you budgeted anyway. If you're doing a home renovation project, if you're doing a flip, you're always going to spend more. You're going to open up walls. You're going to see things that you never imagined being there. What else?
Or Todd, this is a famous one I see is that, oh, our neighbors have a lovely kitchen. They said they only paid 5 grand to rehab their kitchen, so we could do ours for 5 grand. But they didn't keep an accurate budget sheet. They didn't tell you about the failed contractor that started off the first time and took their $1,500. So remember, I like to say never take anybody's word for a number. And I really mean that. Like, always do your due diligence. And also, what if they rehab their kitchen 34 years ago? I promise you prices have changed. So that's another thing is when people say, oh, so and so only did their bathroom for 3 grand. Yeah, but their uncle did it. So it's a difference, right, between a professional contractor and having an uncle. So I didn't mean to cut you off there, Ted, but
No.
I just remember that's a common one when they hear
Yeah.
somebody did it for such and such amount, and then they start their own project and the budget is nowhere near that.
Or you're talking to an inexperienced contractor, right? Hey, we can do something for $10,000, and you get into it and you're like, that's ridiculous. No one could ever do it for $10,000 or the right way. But to your point about the contractor I mean, look, I've been in this business for 32 years in one aspect or another. And, just 3 years ago, I ended up paying almost $4,000 more for a painting job. The budget should have been I think 4,200 for painting, and it ended up costing me over $8,000 because the first painter did exactly what you said. They painted badly. This is a guy that I knew that painted multiple houses. He ran off with my money. I broke the golden rule. I wrote him a check because he's like, oh, my van broke down. I'm hung up on this job. And the guy had done like 5 jobs for me over the last couple of years before this. So I was like, whatever, this is against my better judgment, but I did it. Not only that, but I went and I met him somewhere. I drove 40 minutes to meet him to pay him, which is ridiculous, complete waste of time. And then he didn't show up. He ghosted me. He painted the easy walls, didn't paint the hard walls. And when the painter came in, they're like, oh, this is crap. We got to paint the whole thing over again. So, again, I mean, contractors are important. Don't just hire the people because you're trying to save money. Check them out, vet them out. Oh, it's fun, John. Hopefully, we
Yeah.
gave some good advice tonight.
Appreciate you having me on. As always, enjoy talking with you.
I love watching you grow, man. I'll tell you what. I love watching your YouTube videos, guys. If you haven't heard of John before, check him out on YouTube. Um, does an amazing job educating people. That's what we like to do here. And if you like this video, guys, help us out by giving it the thumbs up. It lets us know that you enjoyed this video. And it also helps the algorithms pick it up and put it out there. So more people looking to learn from things that we've done for many, many years can benefit from this video. John, thanks again.
Appreciate you.
Okay, guys, until next week, have a great week.